Hi, I'm John Kursky, and in this video, I'm going to show you that if you see this potential issue in Power Query Lint, why relative path is important and how it can make sure that your semantic models refresh in the Power BI service. So let's set the stage with why relative path is important. Up on the screen here, I've got a table of URLs that I want to be able to pull information from individually. And in this case, I'm using a simple example of Power BI blog posts. But you can think of this as something where this could be a set of API endpoints that you want to hit each time as you get new rows of data, or different URLs that you need to be able to pull in certain XML content. And typically what you'll see is you'll have your list of URLs, and you'll do something like this, where you'll do a Web.Contents, and you're pulling in the link for each row. And this works beautifully in Power BI Desktop. And when you go to publish it to Power BI service, you'll get a message like this when you try to refresh. And it says you can't schedule the refresh for the semantic model because the following data sources currently don't support refresh. And the reason you have that problem is when Power Query in the service is trying to figure out what credentials need to be used, it has a hard time because that's dynamically being generated at runtime on refresh. And so how do we get around this issue? Well, first of all, let me highlight the issue that shows up in Power Query Lint. So if I go and copy this code, go to Power Query Lint, hit Lint, you'll see this message. And the way we can get around it is using a parameter for Web.Contents called the relative path. And so what I'll show you is the alternative approach to using, instead of this Web.Contents function and using the link, how we can get around that. So I'm going to pull up another file here. Let me drag this over. Open this up in Power Query. And so the first thing you'll see is I've added in a parameter for base URL. And by having a base URL that I'm going to use in Web.Contents, when it's in the service, it will the Power BI service will understand to use those credentials for that specific URL. And then every other kind of sub URL or path in this domain path can be used as a relative path, and Power BI will just know, well, the credentials is associated with, in this case, powerbi.microsoft.com, and all the other calls will use those same credentials. So what's the difference here? So I've got the base URL, and when I go to the add custom, what you'll notice is I provide the base URL and the relative path to the link instead. But you'll notice that the link here doesn't have the domain in it. And so since I have that base URL, I'll just add a simple replace statement to basically get rid of the base URL at the front of that hyperlink. And so now in the custom URL, you'll see I have web base URL and I've added in relative path equals the length. And so if I was to then copy this into Power Query Lint, go up, clear this, paste, you'll see that that potential issue is gone. And if I go back to the Power BI service here, you'll see I published it with those changes, and I've got a refresh that has succeeded, as well as data source credentials that I can edit and refresh. So hopefully you learned something. I hope this has been helpful. Web.Contents is a very powerful function, and it is important to kind of understand why relative path is an important parameter with that and how to avoid those issues. So stay tuned, please subscribe. We'll have more rules out and features in the coming weeks.